What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So hopefully everyone out there who celebrates had a great Easter weekend, got a chance to see the family, eat some good food, even went Easter egg hunting. But today we do have a bunch of things to go over, which does include the PlayStation 5 Pro and what exactly makes a game Pro enhanced, with some leaked material sort of shedding some light on that. And then also we have some controversy hitting the PlayStation 2, which is very weird to say in 2024. And then we also have seemingly a big time remake that's leaked out early until you remember exactly what day it is. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early and ad-free. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Unicorn Overlord, which is a fairly recent release from Vanillaware that people have gotten a kick out of. And if you haven't seen it yet, there's a demo that's fairly lengthy and will give you a good idea as to what exactly the game is. But it does appear that it has been rolling along in terms of sales. We can see this posted up by Wario64, saying that Unicorn Overlord has sold over 500,000 units worldwide. This was shared in an accolades trailer that was posted up here by Atlas. And this is good news, mostly because apparently Vanillaware just ran out of money during development for this game, so they were like on the brink of just trying to get this thing out there, and that is one of the reasons that there's not a PC release. At least that's kind of the story now. So this being done without a PC port is great news for Vanillaware, obviously, because I would assume that the next step would be a PC port, which should work to springboard sales even further. And this, to me, has 1 million unit seller written all over it, which for an RPG like this is actually really, really good. It's one of those things where we talk about certain expectations being set where a company expects 5 or 10 million sales, or it's like a failure. In this case, Vanillaware would be absolutely ecstatic to see that 1 million mark, and I think they're on track for it. Also, we did have an interesting release for the Xbox in terms of like a dynamic theme, which this is posted up by their official Xbox account over on X, saying, honoring a true legend, we've added a new dynamic dashboard background featuring Xbox 360's Blue Dragon with art and character designs by Akira Toriyama. And this looks really, really cool. Obviously, it kind of being in motion there in the background for your Xbox, I think is a really, really good look. Here's the issue. Tom Warren shared some images of what it looks like in practice, you know, with all of those icons up, and this is the thing I'm not a fan of. While it's really cool to have dynamic dashboards like this for your backgrounds, they get covered like halfway by just all these things that are just thrown on your dashboard, and it's very unfortunate because you don't really get the full effect of it. You can kind of lower everything completely and then you can get a good look at it, but most people are going to, you know, be using their system and scrolling around. I feel like there has to be a better way to incorporate these dynamic backgrounds other than how they're doing it now. But really, really cool stuff to see a Blue Dragon dynamic dashboard get released. You can go check it out right now. Oh, and it does look like there is a PlayStation 5 native version of Minecraft on the way. This was spotted over on Reddit with this post here. They say now that Microsoft have their PS5 development kits, it looks like the long-awaited native PS5 version of the game is not far away from release. The title IDs are listed here with, well, PPSA 19638_00, obviously Minecraft, but there's also like key art there. And it's funny because I completely forgot there's not even people are still just playing the PS4 version there. And I know there's a whole thing with it even on Xbox for like the Xbox Series native version that was like ray tracing and that sort of thing. I guess maybe they'll have just extra features in terms of graphical settings for Minecraft, although Minecraft is still going to look like Minecraft. But when they did show off some of the ray tracing stuff, sure, it looked better in terms of lighting. Maybe they'll go that direction. Maybe they'll eventually do something with PSVR 2. Even that, I don't know, because PSVR 2 just seems to be kind of on the back burner for Sony themselves. But either way, if you're someone who's really into Minecraft and you have a PS5, good to know that there should at least be some sort of title update coming up soon. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a remake that appears to have leaked out early from Capcom. And I wanted to hone in on this one right away so we can also make everyone aware what today is. First, though, let's take a look. This posted up over on X and circulated rapidly, and it makes sense when you see some of the art here. Yeah, Resident Evil 1. In fact, they even have a release date. January 17th, 2025, PS5, Xbox Series XS, and Steam. This was posted up by Evil VR saying breaking a real leaked banner for RE1 Remake was snagged before it got taken down from the cloud drive. Looks like they'll be launching this project before Resident Evil 9, which actually currently that is rumored to be open world RE9. So I don't know how I feel about that after seeing what happened with Dragon's Dogma 2 and the RE engine being used there. But either way, Resident Evil 1 Remake, we're not far off then, right? Like 8 months or so? Okay, cool. So I think RE1 being remade would be very interesting with the current setup we have now with things we've seen with Resident Evil 2, 3, 4. I feel like the original RE1 being brought up to the newer engine, or obviously the RE engine, and sort of that perspective and the way that they've approached those, visually speaking, would be really, really cool to see. The only issue is, well, a few things. One, I think it makes more sense for Capcom to do this, because I do think they will, first off, but I think it makes more sense for them to do it in 2026. That would be the 30-year anniversary for Resident Evil 1 when it came out back on the PS1. But the other issue here is it's April Fool's Day, and that's something you're going to obviously watch out for today, is there is going to be a lot of attempts to trick you online. I wasn't going to do an April Fool's Day show. I thought about it, but then I'm like, it just feels like kind of a waste of a day, because as we went through and the stories got more and more ridiculous, you'd start to realize, oh yeah, that's right, it's April 1st, and then it's like, okay, what did we do for the entire day? Nothing. So in this case, I would look at this as probably a very elaborate April Fool's Day kind of elaborate. I mean, the person apparently is a graphic designer, so this probably didn't take him too long to make, and that's kind of where I'd leave it until we get some corroboration, because the thing I've noticed with Resident Evil in general, stuff just seems to leak out all the time around it. Like, it's not very secure necessarily with Capcom and some of these upcoming projects, so I would expect this information to really pick up again this week, if indeed it is correct. I think we will get a Resident Evil 1 remake at some point. I don't necessarily think this in particular is pointing to it, along with that release date that's on the banner. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro, which at this point is the big product seemingly for holiday 2024, at least when it comes to hardware in the video game space. We're essentially expecting this thing to come out, and for games that aren't 4K or like are heavily upscaled to really at least resemble 4K, will get us closer to that target resolution and hopefully be able to smooth out most of these games with frame rate issues. Well, we do have some more information coming out of Insider Gaming with Tom Henderson, who's been completely on top of this story, as originally he was the one that really broke the news that we could expect a PS5 Pro holiday 2024. Well, now he's got some information around what it takes to get the Pro Enhanced tag. So with the PS4 Pro, on the back of the box, it would say like Pro Enhanced for the PS4 Pro, and that usually would signify some sort of enhanced version of the game to take advantage of that new hardware. And it seems like Sony is doing the same thing here with the PS5 Pro, and we have some outlines as to what you have to do to exactly get to that mark as a developer, which this is over on Insider Gaming. And it looks like we have a PS5 Pro exclusive graphics mode that would combine PSSR, that's their upscaling solution they would be implementing here with the PS5 Pro, using some sort of AI acceleration chip to upscale resolution to 4K, a constant 60 FPS, and add or increase ray tracing effects. PlayStation goes on to continue that games may also be given the PS5 Pro Enhanced label if they offer any of the following enhancements: increased target resolution for titles that run at a fixed resolution on the standard console, increased target maximum resolution for titles that run at a variable resolution on the standard console, increased target frame rate for titles that target a fixed frame rate on the standard console, and inclusion of PS5 Pro ray tracing effect. So it's essentially what we would expect out of this, mostly just all on the fidelity side. But the thing that I do like is that they have at least pointed to the idea of them focusing in a bit on the frame rate. That was something I really wanted to put in there as a poll question today. When you go into a game, what do you pick? Resolution or performance, essentially 4K or lower resolution with 60 FPS. And if we can get a PS5 Pro to come out that more or less gives us 60 frames per second on most, if not all games, again, Dragon's Dogma 2 is kind of up in the air since that is CPU bound, but I would say the vast majority of titles target 60 FPS. For me, that would actually be worth the upgrade, and I'd be all over a system like that, because I've just experienced so many titles that are sketchy in frame rate, or they turn the resolution down so much it's noticeably blurry to get to that 60 FPS, which even then at times can be kind of rough. So we have to see how exactly developers and publishers take advantage of this new hardware, but I do at least like the idea that Sony is sort of outlining this with frame rate in mind, because I do kind of feel like based on what we've seen when it comes to the marketing angle, most of these publishers would probably push a lot of their developers to just go all fidelity, take advantage of this upscaling 4K. We'll get screenshots of the 8K, whereas I'm sitting here just thinking, guys, can we just figure out 4K 60 first before we start talking about 8K? Because I don't really know how many people out there have 8K sets in the first place, so I don't really know who you're appealing to, what kind of audience you're appealing to with that, or even if it's worth going to 8K at this time, because that audience is so small. You're not going to make any kind of substantial money from them. So 4K 60, let's get it figured out. I do like the idea that Sony is pushing frame rate. We'll see how it actually works out when we hear about this system from them. Probably at this point, August. I feel like they're going to show off this system a few months before it comes out, similar to what they did with the PS4 Pro. Next up, let's talk about Jim Ryan and the PlayStation 2, as there was quite the conversation after him talking about the lifetime sales of the PlayStation 2, because we have this number in mind right now at 155 million, but going back years and years, there's been discussion that maybe the PS2 has sold more than that, just based on some lagging indicators when it comes to shipments and things Sony themselves have said in financial reports. Well, Jim Ryan pretty much just threw a number out there and might have made the Switch's run at the best-selling system a bit harder, at least that's according to people online. We can see this posted up, though, by IGN. And this was Jim Ryan on the official PlayStation podcast. When asked about what the 2000s brought to mind, Ryan responded with the 2000s, that would be, I would say, 160 million, which is the number of PS2s that we sold, a high watermark. So if you're unfamiliar, at this time, the last reported number for the PlayStation 2 by Sony was in 2012. It's about 155 or so million units. But from there, they actually kept selling and shipping PS2 systems. They just didn't report it specifically. In fact, Daniel Ahmed has an entire tweet going over this, and it's very, very in-depth, but I will show you the conclusion here, where he says, we now have a range of 155 million plus 3.6 million to 6.8 million for a total of 158.6 million to 161.8 million. Now, the official number is still technically 155, and I don't think Sony cares enough to go back and update that at this time. Like, the people online who were really annoyed at Jim Ryan for saying this care more than Sony, who's the company that actually sold these systems. So Jim Ryan throws out the 160 million. People look at that and go, well, obviously he's trying to sabotage the Switch's run at the top spot. Guys, Jim Ryan's out now, like he's retired at this time today starting. I feel like he recorded that podcast in his mind halfway to Cancun. I just don't think he was thinking, oh, here it is. I'm going to throw this number out there and the Switch is going to have another 5 million, has to climb to get to that mark. I mean, it's not, the system hasn't been officially updated, so until Sony does that, we're still probably just going to run on the 155 million number that was officially reported. And that's the key thing. Technically, Sony, while they did still talk about the PS2 past their 2012 time where they just stopped reporting specifically PS2 numbers, they would kind of combine it with PS3 and PS2 sales total, and that's the way people were able to sort of figure out and deduce what the amount or the range of PS2s that still sold, because they were still selling them for about a year or so after that 2012 cutoff for reporting. So sure, you can look at it and say, well, the Switch, to leave no doubt, has to get over 160 million, can't just end up at 158, because there'll always be that little bit of, that little doubt in there that, okay, maybe it's not the best-selling system, but to me, who really cares that much? Because really, it's two companies that sold an incredible amount of systems either way you look at it, whether it's 155, 160, 158, you're talking about 150 plus million systems selling, and these companies making billions and billions of dollars, and like they barely care necessarily about the exact number and how they compare them completely. So yeah, I don't think Jim Ryan had any master plan other than just answering like kind of off the cuff, a question on the podcast about the 2000s, and he's a numbers guy. So of course he's going to start thinking about the biggest success that they had, and that would be the PS2. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Gearbox, as there is a bit of a follow-up after they were sold by Embracer Group to Take-Two, and that has to do with what else? Layoffs. Now, when you have a large publisher company like Gearbox that would then go to another large publisher like Take-Two, you would have redundancies in jobs, and well, they moved quickly in order to just eliminate different positions. As we started to hear about this on social media accounts, people posting up that they were just let go right then and there. I mean, hours even after the sale happened. This was posted up by Insider Gaming, saying, according to multiple posts on social media, a number of people are no longer working for Gearbox after it was announced that the company is being purchased by Take-Two Interactive. This was posted from a former PR manager, Jennifer Locke, saying, along with countless others, I've been informed I've been laid off at Gearbox. It really was a dream come true working on this team, and I'm incredibly grateful for my time here. Senior user research investigator posted up online saying, I just lost my job. We also have this one here. This is the director of online engagement, Chris Harada, on LinkedIn. Following the exciting news of Take-Two Interactive and Gearbox Entertainment merger last night, I, like many others, received the unfortunate news this morning that my position will no longer be required. And get this, after all this is going on, right? People are being laid off because the Gearbox obviously going to Take-Two, again, redundant positions, that sort of thing. We have Embracer Group being asked one of the most ridiculous questions I've ever seen after everything they just went through. They were asked if they're going to start buying studios now. Like, this is over on, we can see VGC, saying, surprisingly, on the day the restructuring was completed, CEO Wingsfors was asked in an investor call whether Embracer was ready to start acquiring studios again, to which he replied, it was too early to say. Yeah, you think? Maybe just a little too early. I think I'm good with Embracer buying any studios at this time. I think they've pretty much showed that they aren't necessarily up to the task now. I mean, they grew way too fast. They were cutting it close the entire way to where that one deal nearly just destroyed the company, and they had to just start shedding at this. I mean, really, if you look at it, more than $1 billion in just total value from the developers, the staff, the studios, publishers, everything that they had to offload. And you want them to start acquiring again? I think this is the point where you got to kind of rest. There's going to be like that cool down period where you even have to stop and think if they should be doing that in the first place. I think at this time, they should be looking to even sell some of their other properties, because I just don't think they're suited to manage the number of intellectual properties they have. They're just going to go on the shelf. We just won't see them for years, maybe ever at this time. So that's kind of where I am with Embracer Group. They just need to get things sorted out with their lowered expenses and start releasing some games so they can make money. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if you started up a game on a PS5, Xbox Series X, and these are the options presented, which one are you going with? So the vast majority went with 1080p at 60 FPS, 82% did, but then 18% still said, hey, you know what, 4K, 30 FPS, I want the full like graphical fidelity, at least amount of compromises possible when it comes to the visual effects. And I mean, that is still a substantial part of the market if you really consider, let's just say 20% do prefer just having the best looking experience, don't care about the frame rate. That's millions and millions of people. I do think the best course of action is to just have options for both, right? I'm not a huge fan of a game coming out and saying we're going just fidelity and it's just going to be 30 FPS. That's it. That's all there is to it. I don't mind turning down the resolution to get 60 FPS. I understand some games, not possible because it is CPU bound, like what we're seeing with Dragon's Dogma 2. So at that point, I guess turn on the ray tracing and do whatever you can with the resolution to bump that up, because it wouldn't matter anyway. But when you are able to at least add a performance mode that has 60 FPS most of the time, that's what I would rather play on, even if it looks as blurry at times as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And we'll finish up the comments of the day. We'll start with this one here. This is posted up by Elma's Heavy, saying, what has been ruining the video game industry for so many years now? It's all these investors without any gaming experience or interest, just trying to chase the live service Fortnite trend. And that's one of the biggest factors now, are just, yes, the kind of the corporations, the suits, the investors at the top who see these live service games don't necessarily realize that it's almost like a 1 in 100 chance of really hitting on one that's successful enough just to keep itself afloat, let alone be a Fortnite that's like a 1 in a million at this time. And that's kind of it. They don't necessarily understand the gaming at its core. And that's sort of what happens when, I mean, the industry grows to this point. Whereas back in the day, you could say with the PS1, the PS2 era right in there, there's just a lot of creativity because the budgets were smaller. So you could just take a chance. Whereas now, taking a chance could cost you $100 million and your entire studio just being gone the next day. The risk-taking is just significantly lower now than it was then, and unfortunately, that means a lot of the creativity goes with it. And then we'll go to a comment from the member video. This is posted up by Rectangle saying, Persona 3 is already 25% off. Glad to be a patient gamer. 6 months later, and it's 50% off. Yeah, I mean, if you can just hold out and wait for most games, you could probably get them 50% off. I mean, it depends. Nintendo games, not as much. Sony, by the way, has kind of been playing into the idea of trying to keep their games more expensive or just like retail price and not lowering it necessarily. Demon's Souls from the PS5's launch is still full price. You can catch it on sale 20 or 30% off, sure, but it's not how it used to be with the PS4 where, I mean, a year or two later, it'd be like 70% off or something. Not anymore, but still, a lot of third-party games, Ubisoft especially, as we've seen, will eventually knock the price down 50, 60, 70% off, sometimes less than a year later. So yeah, if you can wait, or it's just a really crowded time, kind of like it is now with a bunch of games just dropping like within a few weeks of each other, hold off, pick it up later, Black Friday, that holiday time period, and you'll get a better deal. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. What was the Resident Evil 1 remake? Would you want to see that? Do you think that's real, or do you think it is an April Fool's Day joke? And then also, what about the PS2? Apparently not 155 million unit seller, 160 million unit seller, according to Jim Ryan on his way out the door. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.